Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us and sorry for the wait. I am very pleased to introduce you to Zoe, a fifth year medical student in LF1. She has done the USMLE, she has her insights about it, and we in the UIMS are very pleased that she was here to tell you all about the exam. So without further ado, I'll let Zoe start, and Zoe, I will share the presentation. So you may begin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yael, and UIMS for organizing this. This is so nice. And for all of you for coming, I really appreciate it. We had a bit of like a technical difficulty with sharing my presentation, so I'm sorry for the delay. Yael is going to share it for me and go through the slides as we continue. I just can't see it right now, so let's just wait. Okay. Okay. So, well, I must say that this is very exciting for me. I took my step one a few months ago, and it ended up being a positive experience. My name is Zoe. I'm a fifth year medical student in the first faculty of medicine in Charles University. And yeah, I think we can start. Can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is what we are going to talk about today. I really tried to talk about all of the most important things in my opinion, and kind of build it from the beginning. So even if you don't know anything about step one, you'll manage to stay along and understand everything. So yeah, and I this is all based on my experience and the experience of my colleagues and friends that took the step one recently. So I highly recommend and invite you to question everything here and just find your own path, because I'm going to repeat this over and over throughout the presentation, but honestly, I think it's such an individual process, and I'm going to do my best to present to you as many strategies as I possibly can, so you can choose the one that works best for you. But yeah, just as a small disclaimer. Okay, we can start now. Next step. Okay, so about generally about the exam. So step one is sort of a summary of all of your preclinical knowledge from the American point of view. I think for me, it felt like the material, as a student in a European university, I must say that it feels like they put emphasis on other things, from what I was used to. So it's all about both understanding the concepts broadly and also memorizing very small, intricate facts and being able to just answer random questions. So it was quite of a challenge to adapt to that system. But yeah, it's a pass or fail format as of a few years ago. And they don't really post their the passing threshold. So they say it's about 62%, but honestly, I don't know, and I think it varies depending on the day when you take your exam. And about a bit about the registration process. I'm not going to get into much detail, but there are two main pathways for registering for the USMLE. When you go to the USMLE main website, and we as international students use the ECFMG pathway. Then it's going to redirect you to their website with all of the information, and it's very organized. It takes quite some time. I think about 1 month to complete all the steps. And by the end, you'll get redirected to the Prometric website, which is where you're going to be taking your exam. And you're going to book your exam day. So a bit about the questions. So questions in the USMLE are multiple choice. The number of choices can vary. It can be 4 choices or 10 choices. And there's only one correct answer. And it's usually going to be a clinical vignette described to you with many details. It's a paragraph long. It can contain like media, like you can auscultate the heart sounds, or you can get some pictures of like radiographs or micrographs. You can get lab values, everything you need to know in order to understand the like what the tester is trying to clue you in. And then you are asked about a specific fact. So it's very dense. You don't have much time for each question, but you kind of get used to that type of this type of testing. So it gets easier. The questions are organized in 40 question blocks, and you get 1 hour for each block, and there are 7 of these. So the entire test day is 8 hours, and then 7 hours out of these are going to be your blocks. You get 45 minutes of a break, and in the beginning you have 15 minutes of a tutorial where you're also going to be checking your headphones. So as I said, some of the questions require listening as well. So you, in your little cubicle, you get like also a set of headphones, and you can check them in the tutorial. There's actually the possibility to view this tutorial in advance, and I highly recommend you to do so because all of this extra time is going to be added to your break. So if you do that, you get nearly like an hour long of a break for your day, and you can split it however you like. Like for me, what worked for me was break after each block, made me feel a bit more refreshed. But like I heard some people like do 3 blocks and then only take a longer break. It's up to you, but you should decide on this in advance, because like you're not going to be wanting to like waste time on like deciding and stuff like that. Like you should have your plan. And about the questions, you just get like everything, including the reference lab values and the calculator. So you don't have to worry about these things. Okay, next slide. So I think like the way that I would like to organize this lecture is like, first of all, we talk about all of the resources, and then we kind of like start organizing them into different strategies and different scheduling options. So if you can go in the next one, please. Probably if you go on Google and you just type like how to study for the USMLE, you came across this amazing duo. And to be honest, I'm a huge supporter. It worked out amazing for me, but like, if you don't know, this is just, can you go back, please? Thanks. This is the first aid book. I mean, it's a bit controversial. I'm going to talk about this a bit later. But this is a book that essentially like sums all of the information you need to memorize for the exam. And this is UWorld, which is the main question bank used by most students. It is a very safe choice. There are other options for question banks, but honestly, I'm so proud. Like, I'm so happy like that I chose this one, because like it's really amazing. It's that good. And you'll see, it's the only time today that I'm going to say the word must, because for me, it's a must. And if you have to choose one resource for the USMLE, please choose UWorld. It's really good. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so this is a concept that like took me a while to understand, and ever since I realized that, it made my study process a lot easier and a lot less devastating. But like the different resources that we have actually serve different purposes, and I believe that if you try to like use them intentionally the way they're supposed to be used, then it's going to be a bit easier for you to kind of like get the most out of them. But the way that you use them should be tailored to you. So it really depends on like your study strategy in general. But the way that I like kind of think about it is that we have the learning tools, which are the main ones, like they're going to guide your studies for the USMLE. The top ones that I wrote here are like the question banks. So UWorld, there's also the Amboss question bank, which I heard is pretty good. Haven't tried it though. And Kaplan. You have all the different video resources. I personally loved Boards and Beyond. I think it's a great resource to like kind of relearn subjects, or like if you don't know anything about a subject and you just need like a safe, fast way of like reviewing it, then these videos are really good. Pathoma, which is so high yield for pathology. Many of us use it for our pathology studies. I think it's very good for the USMLE, especially chapters 1 to 3, which are not to be very high yield. And also, you can also use Amboss if you just need to quickly search something. It happens a lot when you go through questions and you just want to study something very efficiently. Then you have everything in Amboss. It can be a bit much, in my opinion. Like they have a lot of information over there, but overall, I think it's a good resource and kind of condenses everything into one fact sheet, which is good. Then I think the hardest distinction for me was like between learning tools and evaluation tools. As like, I'm going to show the demo of like how your world looks like in a few slides. But when you first go and like you open the website, like you're going to have your dashboard, like with your account, your information and all of your stats. And I mean, it can be a bit confusing. Like you see exactly how much like your grade is for like the entire usage and also for each block you're taking in your world. And like, I know that some people really base their ability to like their own confidence on taking the exam based on these grades. And I personally think it's a mistake because there are some resources which are designed to be for evaluation. For example, the self-assessments by UWorld, the NBME tests, the free 120. I'm going to get to that later, but that's just like in the main USMLE website, you get like sample questions which are about current tested topics. So this is very important. Like these resources are very indicative of like where you're at. And I think like if you want to make the most out of your question bank, use it as a learning tool rather than an evaluation one. And then lastly, we have the memorization tool. Obviously, Anki is going to be the most amazing choice here if you have time and you manage to like stay on top of it. Sketchy, if you're a visual learner, I think it's so high yield, like it essentially just like summed microbiology and pharmacology for the exam. And I managed to do the correlating Anki cards with it. So it was amazing. And then you get other resources, the first aid mnemonics, some people love them. So check them out. Yeah, okay. Next slide, thank you. Okay, so what's the deal with first aid? I mean, like some people don't consider it like a real medical book because it's so dense that like it's hard to read. It's not the type of book you can open just like study the material like as a first pass. I would say that like it's very good for materials that you already got tested on in your finals. I just want a quick review. And also the way that I used it was like as my sort of like guide of what to study from each organ system. Because, if you go on the USMLE website, you search for like a list of topics for the exam, it's going to be like a book on its own. Like there are so many diseases and you really have to like know specific facts about each of them. And this book does amazing job in like telling you exactly what you should memorize. It has amazing diagrams and tables, and it's really like I liked it, but some people don't, and it's okay. And I wish I used it more in my preclinical years. Honestly, I think like it summarizes some topics very well. And there's also like the idea of like using it as like your annotation hub. Like they put that on their introduction. I think you should just be careful not to waste too much time on annotating the first aid book, just because like it can be a very passive way of learning. If you already went through, let's say you watched Sketchy once and now you want to put all your notes in first aid, I think like the best way for you to implement the information you studied is just going to be through practice questions. So just make sure that you like you put a limit to it. And for me, my way of like dealing with this is just to add notes of things I got wrong in your world. And this is like kind of how I kept track of everything, because these facts kind of like pile up. And when you write them over and over again in these pages, it's kind of like it's a good way to flip through the book. So this is what worked for me, and you can try it. Okay, next one. Your World. Amazing resource. I think like it's mostly about the explanations here. Whenever you finish a question, you get an explanation of everything about that disease or the topic that they are trying to test you, and also why the correct answer is correct and why the incorrect answers are incorrect. And I highly recommend you to read everything, because honestly, you have everything you need for the exam here. And I think we can just, all of the information I put in this slide, I think it's best if we see the demo. So the next slide, if you can, okay, if you switch, so this is from the USMLE, from the, UWorld website. This is their demo to like show you how the dashboard looks like. So this is what you're gonna see whenever you open your account. And you see so much information here, which I think is a bit overwhelming. But at the top left, you get your overall score. This is what I meant by like, I mean, for me, it was a bit harsh, like, because at least at the beginning when I was still like trying to study new information, then yes, my grades were a bit on the lower side, but it gets better. And also the percent of usage, which I wasn't expecting to be so meaningful, but like when I first like started to go through all the materials for the USMLE and kind of like do my research, then I watched all these American YouTubers telling you to like do UWorld twice and review everything. And like today, like from my point of view, I think like you don't necessarily need to complete 100% of usage in UWorld if you want to succeed in the USMLE. It already comes down to how you use this. So don't get overwhelmed by this as well. If this is not your like ideal study strategy, then it's okay to find something else. But yeah, okay. You get other things which are very useful here. For example, if you go on the right-hand side on the top, you can see like answer changes, like from, let's say, correct to incorrect. I think it's very useful to like kind of like analyze your performance based of these, so you can like identify patterns. If you tend to like change to incorrect answers, then you can try to avoid that in your exam. And then on the next slide, this is when you are trying to create a test. Can you go? Okay, so I couldn't fit this in one page, but this is how it's going to look like whenever you want to create a test in UWorld. And I'm going to walk you through one by one all of the different things you can choose. So first thing is test mode. It can be either tutor mode or timed mode. The timed mode is mimicking the exam. So it's going to calculate the amount of time the exam should take you based on the amount of questions you chose for that block. I think it's very useful towards the end when you're trying to like work on your test taking strategy and kind of like stay in the time limit, because it can be hard for some students. And then tutor mode kind of like stops you after each question. Like the time is going to elapse anyway, but like whenever you finish a question, it will stop and let you see the correct answer and the explanation, so you can study each question separately. And I think it's very useful for the beginning because when you're first like studying new material, it's not about the timing. Like you should really maximize each block to understanding new concepts, and I think it's very useful. You can also combine the two if you feel like it. I did that as well. It was nice. And then you have the question mode. Mostly you're going to be using the first one marked here, which is the unused, because you want to see as many new questions as possible. But something I found very helpful towards the end is to also do some dedicated blocks for the incorrect one, because it just gives you an opportunity for like active recall of concepts you already studied and to see how you managed to improve. And I really liked it as well. So I recommend you to try it if you want. And then you can choose either if you want to do it by subjects or by systems. And this is a dilemma. Like some students say that like it's best to start mixed questions all from the beginning. For me, it was like I couldn't see myself doing that. That's like such a broad exam, and there are so many topics that it seemed a bit overwhelming. But what I did was to work by system, which is also something that many people do. You just like let's say I took like 5 days for cardiovascular because it's a bigger topic, and then try to reach a high percentage of usage out of that topic. And then when I finished, I moved to the next organ system until I finished them all. And then the last month before I took my exam, I mixed all the questions and worked on like this type of test taking, which is like the real exam. And lastly, you can choose the amount of questions you want to put in a block. You can do it in 40 question block, like it is going to be in the exam, but you can also do less. Sometimes I did like a 20 question block, and it was nice and easier and took me less time. So, okay, you can proceed to the next one. Okay, so I think it's like essential to talk about question types and question answering strategies if we talk about UWorld, because this is like the main study resource in my opinion. So there are many types of questions, and if I can group them, it's going to be by the reasoning pattern. So it can be like a simple question, like but not commonly. It's usually going to be like a more complex situation where they will describe a disease to you, and you're going to have to like understand which disease it is by the symptoms and lab values and everything, and then answer about like a secondary fact, or even tertiary. We're going to have one example soon. So it's usually like this more complex thinking patterns. It can also be like a random fact, which is also very common. So just don't get discouraged. You're not going to know everything, so it's okay. This is also something I think they test you on, like how you deal with the stress. In my opinion, it's a very mental exam, so just like keep that in mind. Okay, next slide. So how to approach a practice question. About the timing, like I kept the 1 minute rule for myself, but just because like I wanted to be strict, so I will have time by the end to go back to all the questions that I had no idea what to do with. So that's just the way that I did it. You can obviously, if you have 1 hour for 40 questions, you don't have to keep like 1 minute for each. You can do a bit longer. It's very, very recommended to start reading it from the last sentence, like from the actual question, because many times they're going to add a lot of unnecessary details inside the vignette. And you just need to be focused on what exactly are they trying to clue you in? What are they testing you about in this question? So I recommend you trying that. It takes a while to kind of get used to it, but it's worth it. You have a few features in UWorld and in the exam to highlight specific facts, to cross over unnecessary like answers that you don't think are correct. So I think it's useful to do that, especially in the longer questions. And just know that like if you don't answer a question, it's gonna like immediately be counted as wrong. But like you can never go. It's not gonna be that bad if you just guess. If you don't know, it's okay. We've all been there. So just like don't leave any unanswered questions. I think it's like you might be correct. Like try to do your best to like find some educated guess, and it's gonna be okay. And there's also the possibility for flag questions, so we can get back to them by the end of the block. Okay. So this is a sample question I found. I use the Dirty Medicine YouTube channel a lot. I think it's so good. I'm gonna talk about it a bit later, but like Dirty posts these videos with like amazing mnemonics, and he also has like a full playlist for practice questions about very high yield topics, and this is one of them. So I thought maybe I should use it as like a reminder for you to maybe use this YouTube channel. So I'm going to read quickly the question, starting from the last sentence, which is the question itself. So which of the following tests should be ordered next? Now, there are two possibilities. Either you would like to read the answers, or you want to get back to the top and read everything. So for me, I usually read the entire question and then go to the answer. So 31-year-old Hispanic female comes to the office for a routine wellness checkup. She has a childhood history of mild intermittent asthma. She was last seen 4 months ago for a depression screen after she had her third spontaneous abortion. Today, review her lab work, which is remarkable for the following. So, get the lab work here. You can see that RPR is positive. And now there are different answers. And if you go to the next slide, I marked kind of like what I would mark in the exam if this was an exam question. So first of all, she's 31 years old. So we like Dirty Medicine calls this the autoimmune window. So it's suspicious for an autoimmune disease. It's her third spontaneous abortion. So usually female with repeated abortions in the USMLE is usually going to be antiphospholipid syndrome. And then the RPR positivity is also marked. If you don't know, RPR is one of the tests for syphilis. And that's a bit weird because they didn't mention any of their sexual history. So that's like something they're trying to confuse you in. And then if you go on the next slide, I kind of marked like crossed over the answers which are not relevant. So like obviously like your pregnancy test is irrelevant. Your analysis also like there's the cost efficacy concept like in medicine in general. So you're not going to just order random tests, and CBC is already there in the lab values. So obviously it's not going to be that. Then we have to decide between the first and last answers, which are both related to syphilis. So essentially what they're asking here is, how do we rule out syphilis and prove that this lady has antiphospholipid syndrome with a false positive results for syphilis, which is something you should know about antiphospholipid syndrome. And then the last one, venereal disease research laboratory test, is also false positive. So if you go on the next slide, then you see that the first one is the correct one. So I'm not here to like try to teach you anything. I just chose this example because I think it kind of shows the way you can kind of think about the questions, like how exactly to approach them. The idea here is that sometimes it's going to be very obvious which answers can be crossed over, but sometimes it's going to be quite confusing, and you'll have to choose. And here the detail of like VDRL being also false positive for antiphospholipid syndrome is key. And unfortunately, it's something we need to memorize. So that was the way to figure it out. But yeah, I hope it helped you to kind of like get the idea. I just have to mention that like usually the questions in the exam are going to be a bit longer, but I had to choose this one because it's a bit on the shorter side, and I want us to have like time for questions by the end. Okay, so next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, Anki. Anki is the most amazing resource for active recall and space repetition. There's the pre-made Anki deck that you can just install on your Anki, and then like progressively unsuspend cards as you go, as you watch videos, as you study new materials. You can also make your own deck. This is something I kind of like tried when I was studying for my finals, but when it came to the USMLE, like I didn't have much time. Like I really wanted to focus on practice questions. So what I did was like to add progressively cards that are related to questions I got wrong in your world. And this was my way of like reviewing the material. But honestly, like at a certain point, I think like maybe 2 months before my exam, I just couldn't like fit it in my day. It was too much, so I stopped. It didn't work for me, but yeah, if it works for you and you manage to keep doing it, like some people even make Anki their primary study resource, and then they do less of your world. I'm going to talk about this when I show you the different study strategies that I suggest. But yeah, just keep that in mind that it's not for everyone. It's a great way to study, but like it's not for everyone. That's okay. If you do use Anki, just start early. There are so many cards for this. Like the first SEP USMLE deck is very heavy, and if you want to go through most of the cards, then you need to start early. And with that said, like if you went through, let's say you studied microbiology and you finished your sketchy micro related cards already, you don't need to go through them again when you're studying for step one. Just like if you went through it once, it's somewhere in your brain, and just like you can do some active recall pretty amazingly with practice questions. So it's not necessary to just like keep adding cards if you already went through them. I also use the search bar in Anki quite a lot, because if you have the Anki deck and you want to like quickly go through some facts, you can just look it up in the search bar, and it's kind of like summarizes all the most high-yield resources for you, because for each card there's a description also. So I think it's very useful. And you can also add your own notes. If you use Anki as sort of like your notebook and you got a concept wrong in your world, then you can just add it there. There's a lecture note tab where you can type in or put screenshots. So it's very useful. And next one. Okay, so this is what I was referring to by the study strategies. Before we're going to go into details of like how to time and schedule your study process, I think like you should really focus on like choosing the resources and then choosing the strategy in which you're going to use them. I noted here that like a few strategies that I came across. So you can be inspired by them, but feel free to like find something that works for you. There's no like right or wrong here. I personally use the 70-30 method. So what I did is to initially work by system, and I tried to reach 70% of usage for that system and to leave 30% of the questions untouched. So by the end, when I finished to go through all of the systems, I had about 1 month of like doing mixed blocks to prepare for the exam. There's also, as I mentioned earlier, the possibility to mix your questions from the beginning. Just be aware that like revising those blocks is going to take a bit longer because many of the concepts are going to be new to you. And then what I heard that people did was to dedicate half a day for those mixed blocks and then half days for like maybe watching videos and studying materials that you need to review. So it's going to be a different layout for your day. So take that in mind. And then some people did like an sort of like an Anki predominant method where they really stick to Anki and had like daily do cards. Just be aware that the numbers are going to be very high. Like if you base your knowledge on Anki and you really want to study everything off of it, then you're going to unsuspend many cards from Anki. So you just need to do all of them. You need to be consistent. And then do several blocks of your world a week just to like, you know, work and assess yourself and see where you're at and kind of like work on the test taking strategy. But just keep in mind that you're not going to reach like high percentage of usage out of the your world question bank just because like you're going to put most of your time in Anki. That's okay. That's just like it's about your personal preference, how you study better. But yeah, many people do some combination of these. So yeah, if you have, I'm going to leave my contacts by the end of the presentation. And if you want to like, if you're like debating on a plan and you don't know what to do, I'll be glad to help. But yeah, these are just some examples. Okay, mean break. Give you a moment. Okay, YouTube resources. So as I said, I loved Dirty Medicine. I think like when you really need to like memorize something fast, and you just need like a acute mnemonic, then this is a great way to kind of like finish it within 10 minutes. You'll see that like as you get towards your exam, you really need to squeeze lots of information in one day. And these videos are just like, they're bomb, really. A few playlists I suggest you especially to check out are the ethics, which is not like, at least in my faculty, it wasn't taught that thoroughly from the American point of view. So like Dirty Medicine kind of like sums it up very nicely and gives you example of like different situations. So it's nice. The high yield images is a great playlist when you need to fastly review all of those images that can show up in your exam, and you can test yourself through it. And the video question bank from which I took the example previously, it's pretty good. For biostatistics, there's the famous Randinil series of videos. I use it and it's pretty good. Like you can learn it from other resources, but at the end, it's all about like knowing how to answer those questions. So what he does is essentially like bring lots of examples for like questions that can really like show on your exam, like they can really be tested on. So I would recommend to like have a piece of paper next to you and just try to solve the questions with him. Okay, next slide. Other resources. Probably you're gonna reach to these more in your, let's say, preclinical years. And as a side note, like I added my my classification of resources to the side because like I think it's very important to keep in mind that like each resource serves like a different meaning, if you will. But I highly recommend Boards and Beyond, especially for subjects that are not covered by Sketchy and Pathoma. Pathoma is, as I said, very, very high yield for pathology, and the first 3 chapters really cover like a very important like section in the exam, dealing with all of the immune system and all of the details about the immune response and inflammation and all of that. So some people even say that if you have to choose something to watch, like the day before your exam, rewatch these 3 chapters. I didn't do that, and I don't recommend it. I think like rewatching videos is very passive, and they're going to be helpful for you. But perhaps if you want to like have a read and then try to test yourself on it, then it may be a bit more active, but yeah, it's very high yield and very important. Sketchy, obviously, as I said, especially for microbiology and pharmacology. I did like both of them through preclinical, so I didn't review them in my dedicated study period, and ambos. Okay, and here is a bit of like a summary of all of the assessment tools. I see that some of you are writing questions in the chat, so I'm going to get to them when we finish. So thank you for writing them. I'll try to like answer all of you by the end. Okay, so assessment tools. So I mean, I would use them mostly towards the end of your study period. What I did was like the month before my exam, I took an assessment once a week, and obviously went through it and checked all my answers. I wouldn't do any assessment like about 10 days before your exam, because it can just be very discouraging, and it's not going to like change your grade much to just take another assessment. You better just dedicate all your time to like studying and revising materials you already went through. But they can be very powerful and kind of guide you towards subjects that you need to reread or restudy. So the NBME, I mean, well, maybe previously the USMLE was similar to the style of NBME questions, but even though NBME is quite of like an official resource to use, I found that the questions were quite different from my exam. Like the NBME style of questions is very like those very short questions with not much detail in them. And in my exam, like I had like full paragraphs of clinical vignettes. So it's a different style, but the concepts tested in those short questions in NBME were very useful to revise. So I think it's not completely useless to use it. And some people say that it was very similar to their exam. So you can never know. That's just from my experience. Some people recommend to do like an initial assessment when you first start studying. So before you even like studied anything, just take some assessment and see where you're at. I wanted to do that, but I was so like, I don't know, I think I got so overwhelmed by the beginning of my study period that I thought it's not a good idea for me. And I'm glad I didn't. Honestly, I think that like for me, I really studied a lot from this assessment, but it was because it was by the end of the study period, and UWorld is a really good resource, and it's kind of like a testing experience. So I think it kind of covers for that. But if you want to see where you're at, so it's a possibility. There are some score predictors online if you really want to know where you're at. If you took like an assessment and you want to see like if you're passing the USMLE, but there is some deviation from that. Like they say that like the self-assessment by UWorld are over predictive, even though I personally found them very hard. So they were like, I think equally as hard as my actual exam. And about the free 120, this is like the way that most people call it, but honestly, it's just like the sample questions in the USMLE website. They say it's like if you go there, you see that it's like current tested topics, and they are supposed to update it from time to time. So it's very like, it's recommended to just do it as close to your exam as possible. And there's the possibility to book like a practice session in the Prometric Center, and what you're going to be tested on in that practice session is going to be the free 120. So they're completely like they're free, and you can access them from your computer. But if you want to pay for a practice session, this is something that I did, and I highly recommend. So you're going to be essentially like tested on the same questions. You're just going to have the testing experience. So you go in the prometric, and it's like you're sitting in your cubicle next to people who are taking their step one. So it's like a full experience. And I did that mostly for the mental prep, and I'll get to that later. But like I think it's very useful to go to the testing center, even if you don't take a practice session. Just like see where it is located. Like find the find the class, and like see the place. So like it's kind of like when you go on your first like if you do that for the first time on your exam, then it can be a bit stressful, and it's early in the mornings. Like I don't know, for me it's like the form of a practice session was actually pretty useful, because I managed to kind of learn through this experience that like my stress was like decreasing throughout the blocks, and this is something that I wasn't aware of before I took this opportunity. So I think it's also useful not only like on the psychological level, but also like from the test taking strategy. So what you get like when you finish it is like sort of like a report of your score in percents. And I noticed that like it's 3 blocks, and like my grades increased significantly from block to block. So kind of like remember that, and on my exam day I try to remind myself that if I just be calm and let myself like ease into it, then maybe I'm gonna have like a good grade from the first block going forward. Okay, so after we finished all of the like review of the study resources, now we can start building your study schedule. And the way that I'm going to approach this is to divide it into 3 main steps. You have your preclinical years, and essentially like your finals that you're taking through preclinicals. It's very important to have like a solid base. I think for me it was just very helpful because I felt like the interconnections between the subjects by the point I reached my dedicated study period was all thanks to like the hard work when I was first studying for finals. So that's important. Then you have your clinical years and the pre-dedicated period. So it's going to be a few months of you starting to study for the USMLE. And then the dedicated study period is like, I know that in the United States, like they give them like maybe 6 to 8 weeks to study for the exam of university. For you, it might be a bit longer, but this is the time you're going to be doing most of your practice questions. And if you go on the next slide, I kind of like explained for each what I recommend you doing. So for preclinical, just study well for finals, maybe use all of the supplementary resources as you're studying, like the Thoma and Sketchy and all of that. For the pre-dedicated periods, for several months, you can choose either you want to start your question bank already, or you just want to review subjects with some video resource like Board and Beyond, or with Anki. Either way, like I think like studying for this exam is going to take you a few months because like as international students, like our studies are not designed to fit this exam, and there are some gaps, I think, and some topics that you need to review that you maybe you maybe studied like a few years ago. So it is important to give yourself enough time to study them properly. And then dedicated study period. I wrote 2 to 3 months. It varies. Like it's up to you. Like I think for me it took like about two months, maybe a bit more. But this is the time that you're going to be dedicating yourself for your world or your other question bank. You really need to take the time for each block you're doing to revise it thoroughly, because everything is in there, and you can study so much just from like the incorrects. There's something about like the way they build their questions. really covers each topic from every direction, and you can never know. Sometimes like an answer that's incorrect in one question can be correct in another. So it's very important. You can take notes. I wrote in your first aid book because this is what I did, but you can use any other modality. You can take your notes in Anki, or you can do some Anki for your missed questions. There's also a feature inside your world to take notes, like a digital notebook, and also some flashcards in your world, which are nice. So you can do that. And then you can take your practice tests, as I said, about once weekly before your exam. And next slide is kind of like more dedicated for the LF1 students here. I kind of thought maybe to do a brief overview of how to integrate the different materials throughout your preclinical years. Like if you study elsewhere, just like if you can see, like we study by discipline, so you can just try to adapt this to your schedule. But essentially, it's just repeating what I already said. So as you have a final, let's say pathology, pathophysiology, you can use Pathoma. If you have pharmacology, Sketchy Pharm, and the correlating Anki for a certain period of time, that's going to be very useful. In your fourth year, when you start going into clinical rotations, some of the rotations really like correlate with materials of the USMLE. So always try to check if you have some Boards and Beyond videos that can be watched when you're studying for a final. Or you can maybe open your first aid book and you're going to find some diagram that you want to memorize already. Like try to be creative. You can also start this like way earlier in your first and second year. But as you start this earlier, you're going to find less and less material, at least like correlating material, at least for my faculty. But I think the earlier, the better. And next slide is just sort of like breaking down the dedicated period that I said. So what you should do the month before, a week before, and the day before. You can kind of see like where I was at mentally at each of these stages. So the month before, this is a very scary time in your studies because like it really feels like every day counts and you need to be focused and you need to be on top of yourself. You need to be consistent. I did like my weekly self-assessments. I try to revise only the subjects that I repeatedly got wrong. I integrated some blocks in your world from the incorrect pool, just because like as I said, like I didn't manage to continue with Anki, and I did want some sort of like active recall and spaced repetition. So this was my way of doing it. I booked my practice session. I remembered this like too late, and the only available slot was like 4 days before my exam. Oh, no, I think even 2 days. No, I booked it 4 days before my exam, and then I had like my practice session 2 days before, but I took it and I'm so glad I did it. It was so good and like put me in the right mental state to take my exam 2 days later. And I tried taking care of myself, working out twice a week at least, seeing people, but it was hard. It was a hard time. The week before, I highly recommend to watch some of the playlists from Dirty Medicine if you need to memorize more facts. I try to kind of adapt my schedule to the schedule of the exam, so sort of like a part of my mental prep. So I started studying every day between 8 to 9, so just like to get my clock synced back. I talked to a friend who finished her exam recently, and that was really helpful. Like sometimes all you need to hear is like someone explaining you that it's just like everything. Like I really remember her telling me that like everything I studied is already in there, and like there's not much I can do, and just like it's all about like the mental prep now. So I'm gonna reread some of my notes, but honestly by this point you are a week before your exam, so it's not gonna matter that much if you do another Euro block or not. I was quite strict about not doing any other self-assessment besides the free 120 in my practice sessions. And then I just decided on my break schedule. So I knew that in advance, and I realized that for me it was quite essential to take a break after each block. And the day before, I mean, honestly, looking back, I think I should like I should have like stopped studying earlier. But I studied until I think 5 p.m. And then I scheduled like a fun activity to kind of like clear my head. But obviously I was like too worried about the exams, so I wasn't like I wasn't calm at all through this evening and night. I recommend you to pack your snacks, to maybe squeeze in a workout in the morning. Some people say that like it helps you sleep better at night because um, like you're going to be more tired by the evening. I don't know. I just took everything I could, you know. I just looked for any advice I could. So I felt like I should write it here as well. And next slide is the exam day itself. I think, as I said, like the USMLE is a mental exam, and yes, they test you on like these crazy topics and the most like intricate detail and facts. But at the end, it's more about your performance that day than it is the actual study process. Because I feel like, yes, my study process was harsh, but my testing experience was pretty good because I felt like I was prepared for everything that's going to happen that day. I brought everything I need. I put like a short list here of everything I packed to eat, just for you to, I don't know, to consider. I watched a YouTube video saying that you shouldn't bring coffee because it will make you pee more. But honestly, I don't know how you can survive such an exam without coffee. I actually met a friend throughout that day in step one. And she didn't bring coffee because of that video. And because I had 2 full cups, I shared it with her. And she was so grateful. Like, there's something about this exam. By the 5th block, you're going to be like dead. And you're going to want your coffee if you drink it. So yeah, highly recommend. Just don't forget to bring everything essential, like your passport, scheduling permit. Everything is going to be written also on your scheduling permit itself. You're going to get it by email, so don't worry about it. You can bring soft foam earplugs, and you also get these are like the noise canceling headphones, which are separate from the headphones used for like auscultating and listening to audio files in the exam. So it depends on your preference, but you're allowed to bring earplugs with you if you want. What else? I would say like the overall mentality should be to keep hyping yourself up, because I just don't see any other way to do it. Like, even if you don't succeed, like and you feel like you're failing, like just know that many people feel that way, and many people leave the exam with the feeling that they failed. And it's all about like the mentality. Like, if you let that affect you, and it will be carried away throughout the blocks, then it might really affect your grade. But like, if you're gonna stay focused and do your best, then it's kind of like lying to yourself, but not really. So I really try to like hype myself up. I read online that like the average student will mark at least 10 questions per block. So don't feel bad if there are so many questions you don't know and you're not sure about. Like some of the questions are like sample questions that are not going to be graded. You don't know, obviously, which questions are not going to be included in your grade. So just like try to convince yourself maybe that these questions are not going to be included, and just move on. But always like don't leave any unanswered questions. That's one thing to remember. And the most important part of today's lecture is mental health. So I kind of touched on that already. Just like, I think I really wanted to share, like, if there's one thing I wanted to take from this seminar, is just like, this is a very individual experience. And if I can maybe share some of the things that helped me, maybe, and help at least one of you, then I'll be extremely grateful and happy. Just try to think about it as a marathon, not a sprint. Sounds like a cliche, but it is real. Like, you're going to be studying for this for a few months, and you need to reserve your energy and your power, and surround yourself with people that will help you go through this. You're going to change your plans from time to time. This is one of the things that was like the hardest for me to adapt to, because I did so much research beforehand, and like I was sure I know exactly what to do, like how I'm gonna study, but it literally changed like the day after I started studying. Like it changes a lot when you actually use those resources and um, I don't know, getting the hang of things and see like that, like what exactly they're testing you about. So just be prepared. You can make a plan that seems reasonable to you. Try to make it realistic as much as you can. But at the end, it's okay if your plans are going to change throughout this process. It's a hard experience. What helped me? So a friend recommended to me to have like a beast mode song, and it was so nice. Honestly, like I heard it before my exam, and I like I'm not kidding you. Like I think I was singing it in my head like for 8 hours straight. And it was so helpful because I was just like so focused, and it made me feel good. So try it out. I like one form of like meditation you can try is like kind of like to imagine your test day morning. So like how exactly you're gonna get ready, how you're gonna get there. Something that helped me was to be there once in advance, and then like kind of being able to imagine it better. But like it really helps, really. Talking to a friend, obviously you can study with a friend as well if you have someone around you that's also taking step one. I didn't mention this, but like in your world, if you create a block, you get like the block ID, whatever, so you get a number. And if you copy that and send it to a friend, they can open that same block in their computer, and you can do the same block like at the same time. So it's nice. And you can study together and maybe make a schedule together, or just like study one next to the other. I think it's very motivating. Working out, obviously, even though like I can't believe I'm saying this, but it really saved me. In my pre-dedicated period, I was quite strict about having like a half day off, but honestly, like about 2 months before my exam, that even that was a bit hard to keep up with, because I had so much workload. Um, and then, as I said, like starting to study around the same time every day, to first of all like organize my my sleeping hours, and also to like get used to doing a block at 9 a.m. It was quite hard, and just like I know that I said a lot that it was a hard experience, and it was, but I managed to squeeze in a vacation in Barcelona, like 5-day vacation, and I didn't study at all throughout these day. Like I brought my first aid book with me, but I didn't open it. So it was so refreshing and so nice. You don't have to go abroad, but you can take a break, and I encourage you to take a break. It's okay. Just schedule it in advance, and sometimes it can be even more beneficial than squeezing in a few more blocks. So yeah. Next slide. Bit of credits, and then the next one. That's it. So now I think I can answer your questions. Maybe I don't know if I should start from the chat, or if you want to open your microphone and ask me. Let's see. Yeah, so will be the recording. Which 3 chapters? I think you mean from Pathoma. The first 3 chapters are very high yield. I hope you meant that. 4th year, which month and which point in the semester did you start the actual studying for the test and pre-dedicated period? My plans changed. Like I started the first day of summer semester in 4th year. So essentially, like I started my rotations, and I started studying. And initially, my plan was to revise all of the video resources I already watched. I don't recommend that. I think it was very passive and not helpful. Like you should really start your questions as soon as possible. But yeah, and then I started really doing your world questions, I think around June when we finished the semester, and took my exam in September. Where do you find the Anki for microbiology and pharma? Okay, so I said that you can download the Anki pre-made deck. When you download it, I highly recommend to open some YouTube video of like a guide how to add some add-ons to Anki. So you will be able to see the deck, like the Anking deck organized, because you need some add-ons for the app for that. After you do that, when you go to the search bar, you'll be able to see everything by topics, and then you can just find the correlating decks inside the Anking decks, which are for each of the resources. So as I was studying microbiology, for example, I was unsuspending cards from only the microbiology section, obviously. Did you start right away with first aid and UWorld, or did you work on some preclinical years subject first and use pathoma during pathology? Okay, so I recommend you, if you didn't use Sketchy and pathoma in preclinicals, to incorporate them from the beginning of the studies, because they are high yield and they're going to help you to understand concepts you're studying in practice questions. But you can do that simultaneously. For me, as I said, like initially my plan was to revise all of those video resources once again, but I don't recommend that. I think like the most effective way is to like just do as many practice questions as you can and study according to questions you got wrong. So let's say you already watched like a Sketchy video and you got a question on it and you got it wrong, then maybe you can watch it again if you think it's going to be helpful for you. But yeah, I think like completing UWorld might take a few months, and you should really save your energy for that. If you have any other questions, like I think I finished the questions in the chat, but you can open your speaker and ask or write them now, or you can also contact me. I'll be glad to help you all. No more questions?
Thank you so much, Zoe. I think we will stay here for questions. The thing is, in this platform, most of the questions can be asked in the chat with the microphone. So we'll give it a couple more minutes, guys. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to write them in the chat and Zoe will answer. And if not, basically the lecture is over. So thank you very much. We'll stay here.
Thank you.
I see there's a new question in the chat from Sean.
Oh. So from the start, studying by systems and incorporate as much questions as possible. Yeah, so what I did, if you study by system, you really need to make sure that you keep enough questions in the question bank for mixed questions. So you essentially, like by the end, you're going to want to have some period of time of mixed questions. So just don't do, like if you're studying a certain system, don't finish all of the questions from that system. Just what I did was to complete 70% and then to have 30% of the questions reserved for later on when I do mixed questions. But studying by system was very helpful for me because like it can be very broad. Like even within one organ system, you can have like a variety of questions, and it's just like it's very hard as it is. So mixing questions from the beginning is like it wasn't working for me. So let's see if we have more. How much time would you say is the minimum? It varies. Like I think for completing like a high quality study period with UWorld, I would say maybe 2 to 3 months is the minimum, but it really depends on like also like how well you did on your preclinical years. So if you have a solid base of knowledge, then maybe 2 months is gonna be sufficient. But honestly, it takes quite some time to get used to the idea of studying, and I think like the exam itself, it's so expensive and so time consuming that like you really want to take it once you're ready. So it's up to you. Can you elaborate more about studying from first aid? I got the book and not really sure how to use it properly. Actually, I have my first aid here. I forgot to show it. because I wanted you to know that like mine is ruined. Okay, I wrote everything here, but not like everything. My way was to add notes of things I got wrong. So I kind of like made sure I flipped through these pages over and over again. So let's say I was working on a UWorld question and I read all the description and I found some notes that are not present in my first aid book. So I added them, and I had like a color coding system. So I knew exactly from each resource I added that information from. And that kind of like helped me to visualize it, because I am more of a visual learner. So it really helped me to see these pages over and over again. So like up to this day, like I still remember full pages of UWorld just like from their layout. So I think like for annotation, it's going to be very useful. Another way is to kind of like, let's say you're doing half days and you do half days of questions and then half days of like studying. You can use first aid for reading. If it's material you already know and you're just revising, it can be helpful. And you can also use it for like annotation. Like the classic American way of like using it for annotation as of YouTube is like to watch a video and then annotate like what you learned through that video in your first aid book in the correlating chapter. So you can also do that, but it's really up to you. I think like it's just like an important resource in the sense of like guiding you through the topics. Use it as a topic list, and if you're studying an organ system, just like flip through it and see that you know everything that's in there. Would you limit the amount of resources you had? Top 3 or 4? I think like the top resources are going to be some question bank. For me, it was UWorld, and then some video resources. So Pathoma, Sketchy Micro, and Sketchy Farm, and YouTube. And then as for like some more extended like written material, I would choose either first aid or Amboss. So that's like my top selection. But honestly, if you just use UWorld, you can still, like if you finish like a higher percent of it, like near 100, you can pass the exam just from like reading everything off of there, because it really has everything and it will prepare you very well. So basically, UWorld was your main resource and your notebook in a way. You added additional info from videos and UWorld into that. I tried using the notebook feature in UWorld, but it didn't work out for me that well. So I used it for the description, like the explanations for each question. This is like the main way I studied from, and this is like sort of like a different mentality from our preclinical. So I think it's like something important to adopt early on. But yes, the facts that I felt like are crucial from UWorld, I took the time and wrote them down. I wrote them in my first aid book, but you can do that also like elsewhere. Maybe open like a OneNote sheet or something like that. Or you can make your own Anki cards. You can do some flashcards in the UWorld app. Like it's up to you. So my way was like annotating my first aid book. That's me. Like that's what worked for me. Any more questions?
So that was pretty awesome, Zoe. Thank you so much for this amazing lecture. It was very nice. And thank you everyone for joining. If you would like to receive a certificate for this event, you will get an email that basically says that you have to fill in your information and give us a feedback, and then you can get your certificate. Thank you very much for joining us today. And again, thank you so much, Zoe. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.